Hi everybody, Josh Knight the First here with another episode of Exade Replay, coming to you with episode 30 of the series. Let's get right into it. So this week on the show we have Emu and Pallad going head to head while having a new combatant, really an old combatant, come into the fray, but let's go ahead and start with what we saw at the beginning of the episode. Now yes, before we begin I would like to talk about the opening of this week's episode. In the past couple of episodes since we've gotten Excite back as the opening theme, we've seen the outline of Para-DX level 99 there in the opening. Now you can clearly see him at the beginning. But again, going into the beginning of the episode, we see that we're having a recap of the events of last week, meaning that Emu is still in fact screwed. Everyone at the CR is having to discuss, well, how exactly are we going to help M if he's still under the power of Pallad? As we saw last week, Pallad and Emu share that connection in that Pallad was the bugster that came out of Emu all those years ago. So Poppy decides now's a good time to go ahead and reveal to everybody, hey, I happened to find the secret chest last week, maybe this is something that can help. Now Saiba, Nico, and Hiro are at least open to the possibility that this new Gashot, or rather old Gashot, since it's a proto Mighty Action X Gashot, might be able to help Emu. Taiga on the other hand, he wants nothing to do with it, and for good reason. For those of you who have seen the episode 0 for Kamen Rider Snipe, you know that he has a history with proto Gashots not working very well for people. Now we do get into our first fight of the episode, which thankfully has the girls at the forefront, both Kamen Rider Poppy and Ride Player Nico. Now it's nice to see that the two of them have gotten past their differences and they're actually working together to go ahead and defeat the bugsters here at the beginning. Now Saiba Nico does manage to notice that Poppy's eyes are now blue instead of the red we saw when she was under bugster control earlier. So now that that's been taken care of, this will be the Poppy that we see for the rest of the series when she's a Kamen Rider. Now, of course, their fight gives way to Pallad showing up again to show that he still has control over Emu, and the reason that he's doing everything right now is to push Emu into a confrontation with him. He still wants that best fight with the best possible combatant that he could have, and that's still Emu, and he's going to force him to fight by any means necessary. Now, it's not until Pallad directly threatens Poppy's life that Emu decides enough is enough, I'll go ahead and fight you. Now, I do think it's weird that up to this point, right here after Pallad has gotten him to give him the response that he wants, that he starts red flagging really hard. And by that I mean when he starts saying things that normally a character says right before they know they're about to die. You know, he's telling Poppy to stay back, he's telling Hiro, take care of the patients, he's telling Saiba, Nico, and Taiga, go ahead, take care of Kamen Rider Chronicle, it's in your hands now, as he goes off to defeat Pallad. Now this worries me just a little bit for a good reason. In recent years, there's been this kind of trope in Kamen Rider where the main character kind of has to die in order to get their power up. I don't want that to be the case here with Emu. We've had a thing with disappearing people last year with Ghost and then people dying in Drive to get their power up, but here I would really hope in Exit that that wouldn't be the case. The way they're handling death is very important, and the way they're dealing with it later on in the episode, trying to get around that, is its own thing. So I really hope that's not the case here where we're overusing that trope of the hero having to die to get a power-up. Now it's worth noting that there are several fights mentioned in this episode, but we don't actually get to see the results of them. We just hear about them. We see that Vernier, Guton, and Motos were all defeated off-screen by Saiba, Nico, Taiga, and Hiro. Really, the focus here is supposed to be on Emu's fight with Pallad, so I guess they didn't want to waste the money on seeing those fights and give more attention to the major fight there. And yet again, we're treated to a very decent fight between Exade and Para-DX, both of them using good choreography, there's good wire work, some pyrotechnics, not much, but I do appreciate that it's been a while since we've seen Exade jumping around like a platformer like we saw in the early on episode, so it's good to see that they remembered that. I do think it was kind of funny at the beginning of the episode that they say, hey, let's go somewhere else to fight. They go somewhere else, and then they go somewhere else by use of screen select. I thought that was a bit of overkill, but you know what, whatever. After this fight is over, Pallad further rubs in that the only reason Emu is good at games at all is because of the virus that is Pallad inside of him previously. So that addresses something that I was talking about in last week's episode over whether or not Emu is a good gamer at all without Pallad having infected him. Now, I think it's worth noting that yes, it does seem that he's somebody who does enjoy games, but when that part of him is removed, does he still carry over some of that personality or not? Now, I do think it's very fitting of Pallad to rub that in, that I'm the reason you're good for that, but the other thing to take away from that is, if you're pushing this confrontation so early on, and by early meaning we're only 3/5 of the way through the show, if you do in fact defeat Emu, say you were to defeat him this episode or next episode, then where would we go for the rest of the series? What more meaning could Pallad have if Emu's removed from the equation? That's a good question to ask. Now with Emu incapacitated and Hiro and Taiga unable to help, who's going to save everybody? Turns out it's a familiar face. While this entire fight was happening with Para-DX, over on the other side of town back at the CR, Poppy was trying to figure out how to use this proto Mighty Action X Gashot. Well, it turns out this is all a means to an end in order to bring good old Kuroto Dan back from the dead. That's right, folks, our favorite meme lord and bad guy is back in the series, and in short order does manage to turn the tables on Para-DX. It does appear that, as Popey explains there in the episode, that the power of the Proto-Mighty Action X Gashot, this particular black one, not the purple one he was using at the beginning of the series, has the power to nullify Bugster effects, meaning that so long as he's in the immediate area, Pallad cannot restrain Emu and take him under his control anymore. So that does help. But the bigger problem is that we have Kuroto Dan back, so now we have to figure out what we're going to do with him. Now, admittedly, it's funny how they demonstrate that the way he seems to have come back is by, in fact, turning himself into a Bugster, but as such, he has all the restrictions of a Bugster, meaning that a Gashakon Bug Visor can trap him, so I believe that's something that they're going to be playing up very much for comic effect over the next couple of episodes. Now, it remains to be seen what this means for the rest of the series, given that one person was able to come back from a game over, so what does that mean for everybody else in Kamen Rider Chronicle? It does appear that they're going to address this in next week's episode, as well as seeing the continuation of this fight between Exade and Para-DX, now with Genmu back in the mix. So yes, this is about what we figured. We knew that Kuroto Dan wasn't dead, he wasn't given his flowers, his actor I mean, so we knew he had to come back in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, that does leave questions open for a lot of people, one person in particular, Kiria! Sorry, allergies. We want to see if anybody else will come back, but we want to know about that in a good pace. We don't want them to rush through that. Let's just see how they handle this new development. But of course, let's go over our questions for the week. So first and foremost, Kuroto Dan is back. So what do you guys think about that? Do you think that they should have waited a little longer to bring him back as more of an end boss, or was he coming back not soon enough for you? Question 2, what about people being revived since Kuroto Dan clearly was able to? Do you think we'll see more people returning before the end of the series, or we'll have to wait a little bit longer? And question 3, since we do have Kuroto Dan back as Genmu, what does this even mean for Graphite? Like, what's the point of even bringing him back if he's done nothing? You guys tell me in the comments below. And of course, during the week, you guys can always talk to me over on social media. On Twitter, I'm at JoshKnight1st. This has been episode 30 of Exade Replay for episode 30 of the series, Strongest versus the Strongest. I'm Josh Knight the First. I'll see you guys again next week.